Hey, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Scared Soldier back with another Borderlands 3 video, and in today's video we got Fl4k on the channel with an insane build for you guys. So before we get into the build, smash that like button. Let's get 100 likes on this video, and also subscribe to the channel so you do not miss another Borderlands 3 build. So with that out the way, let's get into the gear, guys. So the most important thing you're going to want to have is the 300% increased weapon damage against enemies above 90% anointment. So you're going to want to have that on some of the proven weapons in the game. You guys may have better weapons than me, obviously. I have things like the Monarchs, the yellow cakes for this build because these things absolutely hit really hard. But you guys can have like the Unseen Thread is also great, a King's Call, Jacob's Pistols, the Garcia shotgun, things of that nature for guns that are basically good with Fl4k. You guys are going to want to have with that anointment. Now the actual shield, this is where it starts to get really nice with this build. So we're having the stopgap with the new anointment on action skill start. Activate any effect that triggers on shield break or fill. So essentially we will be spamming racks to get immunity, because normally Fl4k is kind of a squishy character, and this allows him to have immunity against all damage in the game, which is really awesome. So we will have a ton of survivability. The other shield I would recommend is the Frozen Heart shield, because what you can do is go up to enemies or a group of enemies, jump in there, call out your racks, and freeze all those enemies. And then that's a great way to crowd control. It's also a good way to benefit from the icebreaker, because you can do more damage to frozen enemies, and you also get health back from freezing those enemies. So it's a very nice shield to have. And then lastly, you can have the snowshoe, Frozen Snowshoe. That's also a great one. The one I did want to point out though is the Recharger. The Recharger, you cannot spam this anointment on because there is a cooldown on the Recharger. So yeah, that's probably not the best one to use. So just stick to the Stopgap, the Frozen Heart, or the Frozen Snowshoe. Those are going to be your best shields with this anointment. Then grenade, we're using a typical Fl4k grenade, Hunter Seeker, great for keeping those consecutive hit anointments up with ASC. Of course, you want to match the element to whatever enemy you're going against. So if you're against Grave Ward, throw an ASC fire. If you're against Wotan, have a corrosive like I have. Things of that nature are perfect. We have the Pearl of Inevitable. We use the Pearl Inevitable when we're using the stopgap, but when obviously we're using the Frozen Heart, like I showed you guys here, we like to use the icebreaker since we do more damage to frozen enemies. And the icebreaker we like is the icebreaker auto idle. This is going to give us also a chance to restore health, which is awesome. Since the Frozen Heart is not going to actually give us immunity, it's more so going to freeze enemies to take away aggro and crowd control. We still are susceptible to damage, so we do need some sort of way of healing ourselves. But when we have the stopgap, like I was saying before, we have infinite immunity, so we're just going for overall damage at a certain point. And then the class mod we have is the Cosmic Stalker. This is probably Fl4k's best class mod in the game. It gives all your hunt skill power increase of 25%, and also the perks that it specs into are amazing. I think there's one that gives you more duration and effectiveness. We'll see that in a second. But yeah, you want points into the first perk that you guys see to your left. We'll see that in a second. The other one you're going to want to have is Bounty Hunter and Stackbot if you guys do like to just boss. So if you like to go against Grave Ward, Tyrene, any of those kind of bosses, you can also have a Bounty Hunter or a Stackbot on hand, but all you really need is the Stalker. So let's get to the skill tree. This is the exciting part. So first things first, we're going to have Rack Attack, since this is the action skill we will be spamming to get that immunity. The augments we choose to use is the Falconeer Feast. So you get 7% of max health, which is nice. And then this is Rack Accelerator. This is going to give you an extra rack charge. So you're going to have 3 charges instead of just 2, which is nice, so we can get that extra opportunity to create immunity for us. Then we have the Stalker and the Hunter's Eye. This is just basically giving us damage and all that kind of stuff, which is nice. And then we have Reload Speed, so Second Intention. This is going to help us get back into the fight a little quicker, because sometimes reload speed is detrimental to just sitting there reloading your weapon, and it takes away from you doing damage on the battlefield, so we have points in there. Head count, this is what's going to give you basically almost infinite action skills as long as you're hitting critical hits. Yeah, it's going to be insane. You basically get your rack. You almost always have your racks accessible to you with this perk right here. We don't have Leave No Trace because this is only good, I would say, with snipers, in my opinion, or low magazine sized like pistols. Other than that, SMGs, assault rifles, heavy weapons, this won't really take, you won't get much advantages from this one, because Rocket launchers don't always hit crits very well. SMGs, assault rifles, go through ammo quite quickly with their high fire rate. So if you put 3 points into here, you're not going to be walking around like a Moe's character with infinite ammo. So again, we're not really using too many snipers with this build. And even with the Sandhawking, it consumes quite a bit of ammo anyway per shot. So this won't really do too much for us. The other perk we have, Two Fang. I love this perk so much because it gives you, when you have 5 out of 5 in this, it gives you 25% checks. I love extra projectiles, but unfortunately, a lot of the weapons we use have multiple pellets, and extra projectile doesn't really work very well with weapons that have multiple projectiles. It's better with a single projectile weapon, and honestly 25% chance is quite low, so Stalker doesn't give us any points in Two Fang anyway. So unless we had an actual class mod that gave us like +4 or 5 into Two Fang, it's not really too worth it at a 25% chance anyway. Then we have Big Game. This is really nice. So that's the one I was talking about earlier. You want to have as many points as you can from your class mod into Big Game because this is going to give you more hunter skill duration and also effectiveness. This is amazing, this one right here. Then the Most Dangerous Game. Again, some more gun damage, critical hit damage, all that fun stuff. Galactic Shadow, more critical hit damage. And then Megavore. This is going to give us more critical hit damage with weapons. So what's going to happen is wherever you shoot the enemy, like let's say his critical spot is his head, but you're shooting his leg or his arms, you have a 20% chance to make his arms or his legs turn into a critical hit, which is amazing. And then the next tree we have is the green tree right here. But before we get into the green tree, I just want to show you guys quickly that in the blue tree, we have 3 points in Persistent Hunter, because the great thing about this build is that it's very versatile. So you can throw on your fadeaway whenever you want. The Persistent Hunter, the action skill duration part is not important for our rack attack. We don't really care if how long our rack attack lasts, but we do want our fadeaway to last longer because we can actually swap over to fadeaway if we do go against bosses. So that's what's really cool about this whole build. And with Persistent Hunter, it's going to add an extra couple seconds to our fadeaway and give us free 12% gun damage. Why not? So yeah, so if I was to use fadeaway now, let's say I'm going against Grave Ward, I would pop on fadeaway. I'll put Gorillas in the Mist, and then Unblinking Eye. So those are going to be augments that you would choose. And then here's how the tree we set up is self-repairing system. So we get that health regen, we get more max health. Also, Eager to Impress is important because every time we kill enemies, we want to take advantage of killing enemies because we are doing so fast. We are adding to our action skill cooldown rate along with what's the other one here? I think it's head count. So head count, we're getting bonus cooldown rate from head count, which is really OP. And then we're also getting some bonus cooldown with Eager to Impress. So we can really spam that immunity even harder with our stopgap. All my BFFs we don't really need. The pet dies quite easily on Mayhem 10. Overclock, not really worth it too much. I rather points in Eager to Impress, but we do get a better fire rate from Turntail and Run. So while standing still, we get some gun damage, fire rate, health regen while moving. So this one's while moving actually. And then gun damage is while still. So yeah, makes sense. And then Furious Attack, of course, is going to give you stacks of damage up to 10 times. This which gives you about 20% extra damage, which is nice as well. That's just by simply dealing damage to enemies, by the way. You don't actually have to fully kill them, so that's a really easy perk to get some damage from. And then finally, we have Fast and the Furious. This is going to give us more weapon damage and more movement speed as long as Flak's health is above half, which is perfect because with all that immunity we're getting, we never really run into problems with having our health too low. So this is definitely a great perk to have. And then Rage and Recover, this is also great because we will be able to get 24% of our missing health back since it's 8% of missing health per second, and this lasts 3 seconds. So insane kind of stuff right here, guys, for survivability. And then finally, the Power Inside. This one's amazing because you're going to get bonus damage of 25% when you activate an action skill, and we are activating an action skill quite often. And if our health is full, which is pretty easy to do with spamming the immunity phase of a stopgap, you will get 50% damage because the effect doubles. So really solid perk to have, guys. So this is a really nice overall build for bossing and mobbing and app survivability. So definitely give this build a try. Here's our Guardian rank real quick. For those who want to know, we're at 498. And the perk I was talking about before, we're topped off. This gives you a 200% action skill cooldown rate buff while your shields are full. So this is also great for getting your racks back real quick. So yeah, But without further ado, let's look at some gameplay, guys, of this whole build. I hope you guys enjoy it. So let's see. So right over here we have a quick example of just how powerful the Frozen Heart shield in combination with the action skill start anointment is. So every time I call out my racks, I'm essentially calling for the perk from the Frozen Heart, which allows me to freeze enemies. So it creates that Nova and freezes all the enemies, and I can just go ahead and quickly kill all those enemies with something like the Yellow Cake that does damage to multiple enemies with splash damage. And with the Icebreaker added on, it gives me more damage to frozen enemies. So that's all we got to do. We just go up to a group of enemies, call on our rack attack, and boom, everything is frozen. Easy kills. So we're going to take this over to a couple troopers over here just to show you guys that this is really effective. So same concept applies. We're just going up to enemies, calling in our rack attack to call out that Nova and freeze the enemies, making it really easy to kill the enemies for us. And this is actually really fun because it gives us like crowd control, it stops enemies from shooting us, and we get to get a free kill, which is awesome. So again, you guys see just how effective the range is. And if you wanted to as well on your artifacts, you can look for the area of effect damage. That is actually going to increase the area of the Nova, making the radius even bigger, so you can freeze enemies from a farther distance, which is awesome as well. But nonetheless, guys, you just see how overpowered this is, and I always have my racks available to me. It's one of the action skills that's the easiest to use with Flak. So that's all you got to do. Call in your racks when you're near a group of enemies and go ahead, freeze them, and then do some damage. So pretty nice shield to you guys. Definitely go ahead and pick this shield up for your Flaks. Really worth it. You guys see in the video, pretty crazy. We're actually going to go over to the stopgap now, and we're going to do the same experiment on Athens. So let's get over there and see just how good the stopgap is now. So same thing, we are going to be using the stopgap now, and just to showcase the actual immunity and how overpowered it is. So right away, as soon as we call out the racks, you see that little blue thing around our screen. That means that our immunity is active, and the best way to play with this is actually every 5 seconds, or every time you see that blue shield animation around your screen go away, then you call out your racks. You don't have to keep spamming it over and over and over. It's too redundant and actually will make the duration of the stopgap not last for 5 seconds. So all you got to do, you call it in once, you enjoy that 5 seconds of pure immunity, and once it goes away, then you call your racks again and keep doing that. So you see that I pretty much always have immunity when I remember to call in my racks. It's pretty easy actually, guys. You never take damage. All those elemental puddles, all the splash damage, everything, it's like you have a Zane barrier, but just even more overpowered. So it's really awesome. You can call immunity on demand with this, and you guys see just it does a whole bunch of damage. So it's really, really cool when you're doing the takedown and all these things, because Flak, like I said, is normally a squishy character, and this allows you to just go in the action, run and gun, and have that immunity. So pretty cool stuff, guys. Go ahead and pick yourself up a stopgap. You see just the power of this. I'm barely taking damage, and this is also helpful because a lot of the perks in my green tree depend on my health either being full or above half health to get that damage bonus. So this is an easy way to do so with the stopgap. So go ahead and go pick up one of these with this anointment on it. So for the last test, we are going to go over to the proving grounds and test this in an actual mobbing scenario, just to show you guys real quick all our stuff we're currently using. So same build like I showed you in the beginning, guys. And yeah, this is going to be really fun. So let's go ahead and try this out all together. Here's the Mayhem modifiers for you guys who want to see. And let's get into the action real quick. So we're over at the Trial of Discipline, and we are using our Monarch, for those who don't know what this gun is again. And right now we're using the stopgap first to showcase it, and every time, like I said, you guys saw before, we just have to call our rack attack and we get that immunity. So here what I like to do is just keep calling it every 5 seconds, every time I get into an engagement for the most part, since my racks come back quite fast. As you guys see down below, I always have pretty much my racks readily available to me. So all I do is go in, boom, 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 kill a couple enemies, then the immunity goes away. And the beautiful thing too is I don't always have to call it in. If my shield is full, like you see right now, and I don't, let's say, call in my racks and I let the shield fully deplete, I will get that immunity anyways, which is really, really nice. And the thing is too, every time I call in my racks and they hit something or they don't hit something, since they don't last long, it keeps proccing my action skill and anointment on my grenade, so I keep doing that bonus elemental damage against the enemy. And by throwing my Hunter Seeker, it keeps the pearls consecutive hit anointment active while I'm not shooting. But that's pretty much it. It's pretty self-explanatory. In the next phase, what we're going to do is we're going to put on the Frozen Heart to give you a different look at the shields in action again. But first, we wanted to start off with the stopgap just to show you just like we never take damage. It's pretty cool, pretty insane, and Fl4k is really fun to play with this setup. So here you go, and also not to mention we're doing a lot of damage if you guys haven't realized right now. But yeah, guys, definitely want to try out this build. So we're gonna head over real quick, switch up to the heart and put it on. So now that we got the Frozen Heart shield on, now we're gonna go up to this group of enemies. Boom, you see 4 or 5 enemies right here, freeze them all, and all we gotta do is take a couple shots, and then everything is pretty much dead. And we have the icebreaker on. We switch from the pearl to the icebreaker so we can do bonus damage to the frozen enemies. And what's really cool with the Frozen Heart too, if you guys haven't noticed, every time we freeze the enemies, we get 30% of the Nova damage back as health. So that's also a really nice way of keeping ourselves alive by getting that health. And also our racks are also giving us health at the same time when we call them in. So nonetheless, this is also really good survivability. Between the two shields now, the stopgap, the Frozen Heart, or Frozen Snowshoe, because the Frozen Snowshoe is also amazing. My favorite one to use is actually the Frozen Heart or Frozen Snowshoe. I find it's just super fun to just jump into a pile of enemies, freeze them all, they can't do anything to you, and then you just get that extra damage from your icebreaker. It's super easy, it's super fun. The stopgap is really nice, I find, for when you're really dealing with the takedown, mostly because just the overwhelming amount of adds, and obviously Wotan with his constant attacks, the stopgap is probably your best bet for that scenario. But overall, in terms of just like a normal proving grounds, I wouldn't say Slaughter Shaft, because Slaughter Shaft also has an abundant amount of adds, and they also do a lot of splash damage, so I think the stopgap would also be good for the Slaughter Shaft. But nonetheless, definitely the Frozen Heart is my favorite and most fun to play with Fl4k. But nonetheless, guys, we're getting close to the end of the video, and we're going to be going against the boss. And what we're going to do before we go to the boss is we're going to put on Fadeaway, just to show you guys that we can also use Fadeaway for this whole build setup to do more damage to the boss. So there's a boss coming up at the end, and we're going to do that. So you guys also see in the video just how insane this is. We're just going up to enemies, freezing them. They can't do anything to us. I feel like we're untouchable almost with Fl4k. At this point, he's really strong. He has a lot of gun damage in his trees, especially with the Stalker class mod really helps. And like you see again, we can just freeze these heavyweights, no problem. Sit there, do critical hit damage, which Fl4k does really well against. The only thing I did forget is that Fl4k is better to do damage while he's standing still, and I haven't really stood still much. Anyways, now we are at the final part. We have Fadeaway on, and we are just going to go to town on this boss real quick, and you guys see the damage is insane. We don't really need much else. And now what we're going to do is also show you that the damage still doesn't change when we don't even have our action skill active. There's a couple of enemies here. You can just go to town. You see just it absolutely shreds, guys. So we got our Fadeaway back, and we're just going to go ahead and finish off this boss. And like I said, you see how fast the Monarch Ghost consumes through ammo. That's why it's like I'd rather use something that's actually a little less consuming. But nonetheless, you see that the damage is insane. You can use the Fadeaway build whenever you want. You can throw on your racks when you're doing a lot of mobbing, and then you're all good to go. So definitely try out this build, guys. I hope this video helped. If you found it helpful and you like the build, definitely smash that like button. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, guys. Really helps me out. But without further ado, it's your boy Scared Soldier signing out. Peace.